All right. Looks like we're ready to go again. This is chapter 3. We'll probably be skipping a chapter or two. There's 16 lessons. Just to reiterate, I don't want you to think that I'm going to go through these lessons and that I'll be teaching these lessons from a practical application perspective. What I want to do is just kind of give you a rough go-through overview, look at what is here. And if you're interested, and I think you should be interested, because as I said, this is kind of the foundation of all current and contemporary achievement. The principles that are in here are basically the principles that are the foundation of achievement that have been used since this time, into this time, at this time, and probably going forward to continue. Because like anything, that is worth its weight in gold, or whatever other type of comparison you want to use, if it works, if it has some fundamental value, then people will keep using it. And there are certain books and philosophies and concepts and ideas that have been used down through the centuries, right? This one, down through the decades, it's getting close to a century old. But 1928, this is substantial information, substantial knowledge. Again, it's at the cusp of the new age, the turn of the century. We're talking the 20th century, 1928. So there are some elements or aspects or concepts of the text that are archaic, okay? And I already pointed that out in the first couple of lessons, right? So let's move forward. This is self-confidence. And by now, this may seem relatively, or some of these concepts or ideas may seem relatively obvious. I need a specific goal to shoot at. I need self-confidence. I need to be able to work with, mastermind, work with people who are at my level or beyond, in my field or in adjacent fields, right? So these concepts have been around for a long time, but this is where they originated from, right? This is the origin or source material. Herbert Spencer, amidst all the mysteries by which we are surrounded, nothing is more certain than that we are in the presence of an infinite and eternal energy from which all things proceed, right? So if you don't believe, if you're not a religious person, you're not into the God stuff or the God thing, keep in mind that science does sometimes match up with the philosophy of religion, or some religion. Some religions state that we are eternal beings, that we are never born, that we will never die. We just transform, our energy transforms from one source or one type of existence to another, right? Now that falls in line with science, or modern science, that energy or matter is never created nor destroyed. It just transfers, right? So that's kind of what is being spoken to here, right? You can do it. You can do it if you believe you can, right? Before approaching the fundamental principles upon which this lesson is founded, it will be a benefit to keep you in mind that the fact that it is practical. It is the practical, that it brings you the discoveries of more than 25 years of research, that it has the approval of the leading scientific men and women of the world who have tested every principle involved. Now, I don't know to what extent that is true. And we're talking a relatively brief period of time, 25 years. Since then, it seems to have gained these ideas, or these lessons, these concepts, have really gained a lot of steam, have gained a lot of credence. They've been validated. They continue to be used time and time again. And again, I would go to the high achievers themselves. This is where I've gone. This is where Napoleon Hill went. This is where I've gone, looking at more modern people and what they say, the highly successful. And there's a lot of similarities, I can tell you from personal experience. Skepticism is the deadly enemy of progress and self-development. True to a degree, but I'll talk about that in a second. You might as well lay this book aside and stop here, as to approach this lesson with the feeling that it was written by some long-haired theorist who had never tested the principles upon which the lesson is based. Okay. Now, in critical thinking, to be skeptical is fine. And skepticism in that regard doesn't necessarily mean I'm not going to believe anything anybody says outside of what I know. Everything is a conspiracy theory. No. If somebody presents you with an idea, especially something you haven't heard before or something that's new to you, then you just might want to pause, and even consider the source. Even if the source is a trusted source, is this individual an expert in the particular thing that he or she is speaking to, right? People, as I said before, we are really limited in our abilities and our expertise. There's a lot of, and I could probably find multiple sources for you, verify this. There's a lot out there signifying that experts over the years, many experts in many fields, categories, genres, have been wrong over time, right? That's not unusual, right? Especially when you're dealing with complex systems. When you're talking about matter, theoretical physics, that's a highly complex system. If you're talking about the oceans, another complex system. If you're talking about human physiology, another complex system. And I've had personal experience in a couple of those areas, right? Education, anytime you're dealing with people are very complex, and there are some patterns and reoccurring patterns for sure as regard intelligence, personality type, things like that. But the specifics of what one is going to do at any particular time or occurrence, nothing is chiseled in stone, right? Nothing is 100% absolute. And that's another thing that you'll learn in critical thinking. Maybe someday I'll sit down and go through that. Maybe I have to put together a whole presentation, draw one up for you. But critical thinking, it's about knowing that you don't know, right? Even in fields of science, mathematics, economics, and so forth, medicine, right? Challenging, complex, or technology as well, all right? Challenging, complex, diverse fields. It's difficult, if not impossible, to know more than you know about a particular niche, right? Or niche, however you want to say it. And that's just a small slice of the overall pie, right? Case in point, I worked in the computer field for about, 6-7 years. Started off in operations, computer operations, IBM mainframes. Then I moved into mid-range systems as an IBM mid-range systems programmer. I did that for a very brief period of time. Didn't like it whatsoever. Case in point. And I can tell you, that field itself is very complex. You've got software or applications, and then you have software or applications at different levels, right? You have very large systems, mid-range systems, micro systems, right? And all of the applications within those particular systems, and then within those systems, there are particular genres or fields that are broken down even more, and then again more, and so forth, right? And that's just in the software end of it. Then you have the hardware, and then you have communications and so forth, right? So that's a very complex field, the technological field, right? And there are many fields that are very complex. Physiology is very complex because each individual being changes, right? In 6 months, all of the cells that were in you 6 months ago have been totally replaced by new cells. So you're an entirely new person, right? When you were younger, you used to get asthma all the time, then you grew out of it, right? At certain times and periods in your life, you run into issues. I just had like another case of COVID. I had COVID. Then I had something a couple of weeks ago for maybe 7 to 10 days or so, maybe 10 days, 2 weeks. I was walking around, I couldn't breathe. I go on my usual walks or workouts, get halfway through, 3/4 of the way, and I was like, doubled over. So I went to the emergency room. They didn't find anything. I went to my cardiologist. They really didn't find anything. I'm going to have a real total thorough going over. in the coming weeks. But I'm fine now. I had a heart attack, so it's good to have. It's been 7 years since I've had a really thorough. They call it a nuclear. You're going to have a nuclear examination. Going to get all blown up there. It's like a MRI for the heart. So, and I remember when I had cancer too. So a lot of exciting things going on in my life. I had cancer too, and the doctor would sit there asking me endless questions. And he had paper upon sheet of paper upon paper upon paper, asking me these endless questions, So if physicians are, it's said that they have a practice, right? They're always in practice, right? Just like Neil deGrasse Tyson, the great scientist, or well-known scientist, I should say. I don't know about how great he is as a scientist, but anyways, the well-known popular scientist, right? He says we're always at the drawing board, right? Because we don't know. Stephen Hawking said that science is great. Theoretical physics is great because we're always going to have questions. There's no way that we're ever going to know it all. And as we make more discoveries, as we find more things, usually that means we get some answers, but probably the questions become doubled. Find a couple of answers, a couple of solutions, and then get 10, 20 more questions, right? And that's how it is in physics. Supposedly, the physics, those are the physics scientists will tell you that matter or existence, I guess you could say, is explained through the subatomic level, particle physics, quantum theory, and at the very small end, and then at the very large end, theory of relativity, right? The two maths in those fields work relatively fine. I guess I'm just taking their word. I have no idea. But I assume from what I've heard from the great scientists that they work. But the reason why the string theory, you've heard of that, right, is out and about, and they're trying to come up with a string theory, is that the maths, when they put the maths together to explain all things, or as Stephen Hawking said, if we can find a string theory to tie together quantum and relativity, then we will know the mind of God. We will know where we came from, why we're here, and where we're going. We'll understand all of existence through matter, right? So, but the problem is that some say that the string theory is not even wrong. If you really want to be confused and befuddled and have your mind blown, just read a lot of books on physics, theoretical physics, right? Very, head-shaking stuff. But so bottom line is that, well, even there, we don't know. It's highly complex. Will there ever be an absolute answer? Stephen Hawking, again, says that no theory is absolute. And that's what Einstein said. He said, I know that I'm not going to live forever. When I pass on, my theory of relativity and other theories and ideas I came up with can easily be blown out of the water and replaced by something, right? So if you think that you know everything, or that you have an absolute understanding or can predict weather is another area, right? Allegedly, there's hundreds of inputs and unknowns, right, in regards to weather, or climate, right? Weather is short-term climate. People go, weather isn't climate. Well, what is climate? It's the cold, the hot, the heat, the freezing, the rain, right? That's weather, right? Of course, it's climate. Anyways, but even there, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to discern long-term outcomes. For instance, in the 70s, the experts, if you want to, I can post the video in there. Leonard Nimoy, he of the old Star Trek, the original Star Trek from the 1960s. He played the Vulcan with the ears, the pointy ears. He's the narrator, and he states there that climate experts agree. This is in the mid-70s or so. Climate experts agree that we are moving towards an ice age, and that it's going to happen much sooner than later. And here we are, 50 some odd years later, nothing. Now we're burning up. Then it was global warming, freezing, warming. Now it's just climate change, right? By 2014, allegedly, Al Gore was saying that both poles would freeze or melt. I'm sorry, this is the other direction. Both poles would melt. That doesn't happen, right? So the world will end through this and that. There's been end of the world predictions for a long time. Anyways, so basically, you know that you don't know, right? And this is why Einstein, that's his brother. This is why Einstein said that you have to, at some point, you have to put the books down. You kind of have to just go with your gut instinct, right? Intuition is everything, right? Because of that lack, because of those extreme limitations we have, not only in our ability to, acquire all knowledge, but to take in, even if you have all knowledge, good luck putting all of that knowledge. You would have to have like a supercomputer, right? You would have to put all that knowledge into your brain, be able to process it thoroughly, be able to keep it in there, to retain it, process it, and recall it as needed, and be very accurate and thorough and precise and concise in your calling forth of understanding and knowledge and so forth, and then apply it accurately, right? It's not going to happen, not in this current form, not in this infinitely fallible form, right? So this is the stuff you need to know, right? Understand yourself, understand your limitations. There's only so much you can do. You have only so much time, and so forth, right? Anyways, surely this is no age for the skeptic. I don't know if it is one now, but there's a lot of skeptics out there, because it is an age in which we have seen more of nature's laws uncovered and harnessed than had been discovered in all past history of the human race. So this is, again, the burgeoning or the growing coming forth of modern science, right? Within 3 decades, we have witnessed the mastery of the air, right? The airplane. We have explored the ocean. We have all but annihilated distance on the earth. We have harnessed the lightning and made it turn the wheels of industry. We have made 7 blades of grass grow where but one grew before. So this is all technology growing. And since then, think about how much more technology has advanced and how much more quickly it has advanced, especially with the advent of the microprocessor, right? And that's kind of what came out of the I was going to say 28. Was it 28 or 1925? The Solvay conference. Excuse me, I'm going to the source again. Talk amongst yourselves. I think it was no 27. 1927 Solvay conference. Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, you've got your Planck, Madame Marie Curie was there, Einstein, and others. Maxwell was probably there as well. So it was 1927, right? So this book came out just a year after we moved into modern science. So you can see it is kind of dated. So I'm going to try to help you through those shortcomings of the text, right? Though it is the most highly organized form of energy known to humankind, man, a little different time, right? We wouldn't say that now, can't say that. And this is an age of experimentation and research that is sure to bring us into greater understanding of that mysterious force called thought, which reposes within us, sleeps, lives, resides within us. We have already found out enough about the human mind to know that a man may throw off the accumulated effects of 1,000 generations of fear through the aid of the principle of autosuggestion. So this is a little bit of his ideas, and his ideas, not all his ideas. I'm sure nobody, me included, most of what I'm telling you is just rehashed stuff. Some of it's original, not most of it, because these ideas have been around for some time. And I've also found that if you find something, most of what scientists come up with is discovered, right? Like quantum physics, right? They didn't put it there; they just discovered it. Or air waves, right? Radio waves, they just discover that. Or radiation or electromagnetic energy, right? They didn't put it there; they're just uncovering or discovering, or having the proper instrumentation or experience or enough trial and error, I guess you could say, to finally see what's there, right? We've already discovered the fact that fear is the chief reason for poverty and failure and misery that takes on 1,000 different forms. How about that one, right? I don't know much about that, but fear is a very debilitating element, right? I feared a lot. My life was, I was afraid of everything, anything. I didn't talk to many hard talk. I rarely talked to anybody, unless it was my friends that I knew since I was a child. I began talking to people probably in my mid-20s. I had all kinds of fears, that I had to overcome, right? And if you can't overcome your fears, to a great degree, you're always going to have fear. You don't want to be fearless, like I'm fearless, I'll never be killed or feel any pain. And you run into a bus and get destroyed, run in front of a bus, right? And get destroyed. That's going to be very painful and you're dead, right? So you have to be realistic. But the fear here is basically going out into the world. I'm not talking about jumping off Mount Olympus or running in front of a bus or taking on 100 angry people or something. The reason we have fear is to protect us, right? Well, mostly. But there's a good amount of fear that is in our minds. There's nothing to fear but fear itself, right? You've heard that quote. And there's a good amount of I'll be all right. A good amount of truth to that, right? Good degree of truth. So you do have to overcome fear, limiting fears in your life. For me, I had a fear of talking to people. I had a fear of speaking, talking to new people, standing in front of people and speaking. I had a fear of venturing out and trying something new that didn't include people that I knew, established friends, at least, And what did I do? I jumped off the cliff, basically. I moved out of my hometown, moved to a new city, all by myself. Guess what's going to happen, right? I moved to Boston from Connecticut all by myself, and then from Boston to Los Angeles all by myself, right? So guess what's going to happen? You're going to either survive and hopefully potentially thrive, or sink to the bottom, right? Fortunately, option B was not an option for me. We've already discovered the fact that man who masters fear may march on to successful achievement in practically any undertaking, despite all efforts to defeat him. And again, I would probably have to qualify that statement. In practically any undertaking, just be fearless and you're going to accomplish your goal. No, because there's other factors in there, right? Success certainly has certain elements to it. There are certain commonalities. There's 16 lessons here that show those commonalities among very successful people of the time, in politics, the arts, business, and so forth, education. Right? But at the same time, success is very subjective. There are some commonalities, but there's also a lot of difference between one and another. One person, 10 people, if you get 10 people together, and how each one of them achieved, each one of them would tell you their path. Path was different, right? But you do, if you have these principles, you can certainly use them along the path, even though your paths differentiate, right? Let's see. What do we want to do? Oh, here's your 6 basic fears, right? What are the fears? Poverty, old age, criticism, loss of love, ill health, and death. So one of the reasons why people want money, or a lot of money, maybe extreme money, is you're driven by these fears. Poverty, of course, you can overcome poverty with fear. Old age, maybe through enough money, you can put off old age. You can go and get some of that plastic surgery. That stuff always doesn't seem to work out, right? So people imagine that with enough physicians and doctors and technology and modern medicine that they can keep putting death off, but maybe a little bit, maybe a few years, a decade at most, but nobody's living to be, what's the oldest a human being has been on Earth? 110 years old, 15? I don't know, right? You're not going to live to 200. You're not going to live to 150 or 140 or 130 even, right? And in the scheme of things, think about that. Say you live to 200, or like in the Old Testament, Adam and Eve and his offspring, allegedly, don't know if you believe these stories to be true or not. My dad didn't, but they lived to be 800, 900,000 years old. Even that's nothing in the scheme of things, because how long is eternity? Millions, billions, trillions, eons, endless time. So even if you live 10,000 years, nothing, still nothing. How about 100,000? Nothing. How about 1,000,000 years? Still nothing. Yeah, when we're talking billions, trillions, zillions of years, right? Allegedly, there is no end to it all, right? That's for science and philosophy, I guess. I'm not going to go there. Right? Physical and social heredity. All that man is, both physically and mentally, he came by through two forms of heredity. One is known as physical heredity, and the other is called as social heredity. So this is true. And I talked about this. You're conditioned by what you're born into, right? And that's the social. There's the physical. There's your DNA, and that's the physical, right? Certain people have certain strengths or weaknesses according to their DNA. We don't have any problems with certain diseases in our family, and other ones we do, right? And by and large, most in our family have lived to ripe old ages, 80s and 90s. Not a lot of people. I don't know too many in our family who died young, to be honest. Mostly 80s, 90s, ripe old age, So we're relatively healthy, and that's the physical, or the DNA, right? But there's also the social, right? You're born into a particular family, so there's the familial influence at a particular time, in a particular country, particular geography, particular locale, with particular cultures, with particular religions, with particular political environments or philosophies, and so forth and so on, right? You're educated according to how your family is educated, or whatever, So there's all these physical and social influences, right? Every generation through which man has passed has added to his nature something of the traits, habits, and physical appearance of that generation. Man's physical inheritance, therefore, is a heterogeneous collection of many habits and physical forms. Heterogeneous, you should look up. If you don't understand any of these words, I would say look them up, right? Heterogeneous, like a mix, right? There seems little, if any, doubt that while the 6 basic fears of man, or humankind, could not have been inherited through physical heredity, these 6 basic fears being mental states of mind, therefore not capable of transmission through physical heredity, it is obvious that through physical heredity, a most favorable lodging place for these 6 fears has been provided, right? True. Sounds reasonable, right? That's not too far-fetched. For example, see, there's some stuff that he's middle of the road. It's common sense. It's not too out there. He's not being too hyperbolic. He's not trying to sell or overstate. He's not talking about stuff that's a little, iffy, like new agey stuff, or the metaphysical stuff, or the classic science stuff that's outdated or kind of not based in empirical evidence or research or data verification through empirical data verification, right? But here, these are just relatively middle of the road, common sense concepts or explanations, right? For example, it is well-known fact that the whole process of physical evolution is based upon death, destruction, pain, and cruelty. Now, is that true? Well, again, if you don't particularly believe a philosophy or concept that he's bringing forth, and you feel that it's not necessary, you don't find any use for it, then you just kind of throw it aside. If you find it interesting and want to do a little more research on it, then it's up to you. That's why I'm saying this material, as he said, earlier in the text, that it's really up to the individual what he or she wants to do with this, right? To what extent, to what degree, how much of it, right? And this is what I do with any of these books that I read. I very rarely, I would say, I'm going to say almost never, take 100% verbatim what is being said, right? This book, maybe 70, 80%. Same with Thick Face Black Heart, 70, 80%, right? I just pull out those crispy, golden, thick, crusty nuggets, that I know are going to help you. That the elements of the soil of the earth find transportation in their upward climb through evolution based upon the death of one form of life in order that another and higher form may subside. Cells of vegetation, right, all that stuff. So now he's going a little off the beaten path as far as I'm concerned. And he talks about fear growing out of their experiences and having been eaten alive, right? This is talking about animals, right? Now, are animals afraid of predators because they've experienced that fear firsthand in the environment? Or are they fearful because of what the fear maybe that they've garnered or picked up upon from their parents, right? And maybe is that fear communicated to them environmentally or through DNA or some combination thereof? Tough to say. Right? This theory may seem to be far-fetched, so I'm not going to go into it. Right? By far, the most important part of man's makeup comes to him through the law of social heredity. This term having reference to the methods by which one generation imposes upon the minds of the generation under its immediate control the superstitions, and this is just common sense, right? This you can see a transference, right? Probably there are certain superstitions, beliefs, legends, and ideas, and so forth that we pick up on maybe as Americans or from a particular country or maybe a particular location within a particular country. Is it colloquial? Is it germane or specific to a particular geography, right? There's certain beliefs going on in the South that aren't in the North, that aren't in the Midwest, that aren't in the West, that aren't in whatever, right? So it's complex, right? So you can see things are complex, right? And complexity breeds a lack of ability to really know specifically, absolutely. Almost nothing is absolute, right? Because of the complexity of nature, human nature, our environment, our environs, right? And all of the things that are involved in a particular system, right? Climate, very high complex. There's literally hundreds of various inputs into climate, right? People come up with particular theories. We're all going to die in 10 years. Polar ice caps are going to melt by 2014. And time and time and time and time and time again. Look it up if you're not sure, right? Read about how experts are often wrong. Why? Not because they're experts, but because they're people. Right? People don't know shit. Can I say that? Can I use that word? Right? Our ability, again, we don't have all the knowledge. Even of all the knowledge that we have, can you take all that in and use it? Can it all be usefully used? Right? Cram all existing knowledge into your head. The knowledge that we have on this planet now, right? That humans on this planet have garnered or picked up on. Jam that all into your head, and you're still infinitely short of all knowledge, all existing knowledge, right? I do this in my classes where I draw on the chalkboard a huge circle covering the whole board as much as I can cover, right? Then I take a little pinprick and I go, think, this is the universe, and think that's you in the middle. That's all you know, right? And if you think you're so smart, anybody, I don't care if you're a genius, if you have an IQ 160 or whatever, right? Just go into any library. There's one at CSUN, Cal State Northridge, right? I think it has over 1 million volumes. There's several libraries at UCLA, USC. Just stand right in the middle of the middle floor, right? And regurgitate on cue everything in all the volumes in that library, A through Z, and go. You see the problem? Anyways, through the operation of the law of social heredity, anyone having control of the mind of a child may, through intense teaching, plant in that child's mind any idea, whether false or true, in such a manner that the child accepts it as true, and it becomes as much a part of the child's personality as any cell or organ of its physical body. Now, this is true. People, and it's not just children, people, even adults, don't understand how the mind works, right? Research has shown that if something is repeated frequently enough and people don't think about it, right? They just take it in. They hear it on the radio. They hear it on the TV. They hear their parents mention it. They hear the teachers mention it. Their favorite politicians mention it. Their favorite movie stars or entertainers mention it, right? And you hear this thing over and over and over again. And you don't think anything of it. But because it's been repeated over and over again, why is it being repeated over and over again? Because it's been repeated to those people over and over again, right? And this, old wives' tale. This is how these things get started, right? And that's why in sales, repetition, right? Just keep repeating something, keep putting it out there. Eventually, people think, "Oh, this is good. I'm going to buy it." Right? That's a psychologist. This is what psychologists do. This is what propagandists do, right? Like during World War II, right? There was propaganda put forth by the Japanese to the American soldiers when they were in the Pacific, the South Pacific, right? And they would speak in English and just keep throwing out this propaganda at them, or maybe something has happened. Your so-and-so divisions have been wiped out. All these lies that couldn't really be verified, especially at that time, right? Because communication wasn't as rapid as it is now. These lies that couldn't be verified, especially when you're out in the jungle, you're all out there by yourself, right? And you may have radios, but you don't have connection to source information that will tell you whether or not what they're talking about is true, right? And then we use this propaganda or psychological warfare on them to bring them down mentally, right? And that's one aspect of war. Read the Art of War by Sun Tzu, right? Sun Tzu, Art of War. They read that at West Point. They read that at the great military schools, right? Psychological warfare is huge, right? And that's why one of the aspects of psychological warfare is just to destroy people, physically torture them, abuse them, destroy all sources of food, comfort, take away all comfort, take away all communication. Like modern day North Korea, they only have one television channel, no internet. They're not even allowed to leave the country. Every thought, people who live there have mentioned this, that they believe that everything that they think, even in their own mind, they're not saying it out loud like they're thinking. They think that the great leader knows what they're thinking. Even just so you got to be careful. The mind, unless you know how the mind works, the mind can be very weak, right? Let's see. I don't want to spend again the fear of poverty. This goes into the specifics of all these different fears, right? It requires courage to tell the truth about the origin of this fear, and still greater courage, perhaps, to accept the truth after it has been told. Fear of poverty grew out of man's inherent tendency to prey upon his fellow man economically. There you go. That's part of the Sun Tzu war, right? Sun Tzu, Art of War, right? Just destroy everything, or destroy all sources, economic sources. And that's what happened to the Germans after World War II. Economically, they were destroyed, and millions of people starved to death. And they weren't able to do anything as a country for many years to come. Nearly all forms of lower animals have instinct, but appear not to have the power to reason and think. Therefore, they prey upon one another physically. Man, with a superior sense of intuition, thought, and reason, does not eat his fellow men bodily. He gets more satisfaction out of eating them financially. And this is a part of the Marxist socialist philosophy, right? I'm going to take down the opposition. I'm going to divide and conquer. I'm going to destroy them emotionally. I'm going to destroy them familially. I'm going to destroy the family. I'm going to destroy the emotions. I'm going to destroy them monetarily, right? Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, right? So this aspect or element of destruction, and that's why people want to live in free countries. That's why people want to live in countries with greater opportunities and protection to perform those opportunities than any other country, right? That's why more people come to America. People complain about America. Well, most of the rest of the world does not thrive as well as the United States does. 6% of the world's population, and we have half the world's wealth, right? Even though that wealth distribution is not even, but that's another thing for another time. That's economical. Maybe someday I'll go into that. Right? Poverty is an issue. Society could quite properly be spelled society, right? See it with a dollar sign, because it is inseparably associated with the dollar mark. So eager is man to possess wealth that he will acquire it in whatever manner he can, through legal methods if possible, through other methods if necessary, right? That's true to a degree, but not everybody is a criminal or desperate in that regard. Fear of old age, right? Why do you think people see an old person or yell, "Old man"? You know, like I've had that yell at me online and offline. Because it's not so much that they're mad at you or distraught at you, but the fact that you are showing old age, right? You are showing that person's inevitable situation, right? Hopefully you get old, you know, like get gray hair and get into your 60s, 70s, 80s, right? Many don't. A lot of people don't make it, right? So it's that fear of old age that people, that's why they lash out. Old people or okay, boomers, you know, boomers. There's generational difference, especially the young to the old. First, the thought that old age may bring with it poverty. Oh, that's a double indemnity, right? Secondly, and by far the most common source of origin from false and cruel sectarian teaching. Sectarian means non-religious, right? Which have been so well mixed with fire and brimstone. That kind of goes back to your, what is that? It's probably like Methodist type of fire and brimstone, yeah. You are going to die in hell for your sins and suffer greatly, fire and brimstone. And with purgatories and other bogies that human beings have learned to fear old age because it meant that approach of another and possible a much more horrible world than this one, which is known to be bad enough. For criticism, just how man acquired this basic fear would be hard, if not impossible, definitely to determine. But one thing is certain, he has it in well-developed form, right? How it's acquired, don't know. But criticism, again, imagine, you know, people love to be on the side of the majority, attacking the minority. And this is what they do online. They bully. And they're comfortable doing it because they're bullying within the safety of their own home. And sadly, I think that's what the internet has brought to us. There's good aspects to the internet, but there's also bad aspects. And the more it's done, the more desensitized people come. And I'm going to scream and bully you because you're of a different age. You know, you're older or younger. It's usually the other way around, older, right? You're of a particular background. You're of a particular religion. You're of a particular political leaning. You're not of my party, right? And there's a groupthink. There's a groupthink concept that is known by psychologists. And in my critical thinking classes, we talk about that. That one, we are weak, right? By nature, we're fallible, right? We can get old, we can get sick, you know. We don't live long as it is. 80 years, 90 years, that's long. But in the scheme of things, it's a spit in the cosmic bucket of time. It's nothing, right? Think of the billions of people that have come and gone, right? On this planet alone, right? So that criticism, it can be overcome to a degree, right? You can toughen yourself up for sure. I can tell you from personal experience, you know, but it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of accepting and tolerating and working through the abuse or the mental weakness in your mind, right? But if you want to strengthen yourself, that's one thing to work towards. Overcoming the fear of old age, I don't know how you're going to work through that. That's a little more challenging. Right? Criticism, you can go into that. In every soul there has been deposited the seed of a great future, but that seed will never germinate, much less grow into maturity, except through the rendering of useful service. There it is. Einstein said, don't be a person of success, be a person of value. And as a employee, right? Employers are always looking for somebody of the greatest value. What you're doing now, even if you've gone to college, even if you've been working some time and have a particular field of expertise you're in, what you're always trying to do is do a value enhancing situation, right? Ethically, morally, intellectually, skill wise, and so forth, right? You're always looking to enhance or build upon values, right? Creating more value. So the more valuable you come and are able to help your employer, because that's what it's all about. You are a solution, right? Employer says, I need someone to answer the phones. I need someone to file the papers. I need someone to do operations. I need somebody to program the computer, right? You are a solution to a problem. And the greater value that you bring to that problem or solution, you bring to with a solution for that problem, right? The more you're going to earn, the more you will be rewarded financially, sure, but you'll also be rewarded in inner projection, intrinsically, more fulfilling, right? And there's so much stuff I have to give you. Anyway, so much to go over. So the fear of loss of love of someone, I think this should be common sense. I'm not going to read through all of it. There's a lot of stuff here. I think this is self-evident. There's a hierarchy of needs by Maslow, right? Maybe I can pull it up for you, and I can pop it on the screen here. Hierarchy of needs. See if I can get a. Here you go. That's not these. Yeah, there you go. All right, take a snapshot of that. Can you see that? Why is there so? Oh, there you go. That's better. It's like the my camera adjusted. So, did you see it for a second there? No, okay. There you go. Take a snapshot of that. Snapshot that, or you can come back to the video or pause the video. At the very bottom, you've got psychological needs, food, water, warmth, rest, and some say sex is in there. There's these, how these charts are made up online. There's a slight variation on the theme, but that's basically it. Very, very fundamental needs, right? And at the very top, it's like self-actualization. You have to take care of all the stuff at the bottom, right? You got to take care of breathing. If you're not breathing, forget everything else, right? You got to take care of food. You got to take care of water. You got to take care of clothing, right? You got to take care of shelter. You got to take care of employment, bring in money, pay for all those things. Take care of your health. Take care of relationships. So you have good relationships, right? All the way up to the top. See if I miss anything. Safety, security, right? Intimate relationships, friends. There's the look. That is number 3. It's right in the middle. 2 below, 2 above in regards to need, right? Then you got esteem needs, prestige and feeling of accomplishment. So after all those fundamental, foundational, kind of more like physical needs, environmental needs are taken care of. Now we move more into the abstract or philosophical, right? At second to the top is prestige and feeling of accomplishment. That's what I was talking about here, right? You can make more money by enhancing your value, but you also feel better. We need to feel better. We need to have a sense of self-worth, accomplishment, doing something of value, helping people, right? And ultimately, that's what you're doing, right? Then self-actualization, achieving one's full potential, including creative activities. And in order achieve your full potential, you have to overcome your shortcomings and your weaknesses, right? That's why there's always this talk about pushing yourself. Get out of your comfort zone so that you can pull forth all that stuff that's weak and make it strong, right? And transform yourself, right? Great transformer. How's the lighting? My camera adjusted there. Loss of love, fear of ill health. I think that's relatively self-explanatory, right? This fear has origin to a considerable extent also in the same sources from which the fear of poverty, old age are derived. Fear of death. I think some of these are relatively straightforward. We don't have to go into detail. If you're interested, please, by all means, get the text and start reading through it. You are fortunate if you have learned the difference between temporary defeat and failure. True. More fortunate still if you have learned the truth that the very seed of success is dormant. That dormancy is just what I was talking about. In every defeat that you experience, right? So that dormancy, if you're taking on challenges and constantly getting outside of your comfort zone, you'll run into defeats. Believe me, right? And it's those defeats that help you to realize things about yourself, right? I wanted to become more self-confident, more self-assured. I didn't want to be miserable all the time, just ducking and putting my head in the ground. That's kind of how I lived first 20 years or so of my life, right? I didn't want to be like that, right? So in order for me to live at all, right, to function semi-normally, at least, hopefully, potentially, right, I had to overcome that shortcoming. And I constantly put myself in harm's way, constantly put myself in situations where I was going to be defeated, right? But as you win these battles, battle after battle, like Washington, right? You won little battles here and there, right? So that overall, they won the war. The British actually won more battles, but it was the Americans who won enough battles, right, to be annoying enough that the British just said, all right, keep your silly country. And another philosophy, major philosophy of Washington was to run away. Kind of like Monty Python, run away. What should we do? What should we do, sir? To the commander, run away. And that, fight for another day. If you're not strong enough, if you don't have the troops, if you don't have the ammunition, if you don't have the proper lay of the land, the advantage of the lay of the land, get the hell out of there. That's what retreating is. Retreat, Sun Tzu, Art of War, retreats in there. Retreats in there, right? It's a technique, and it's a very useful, practical, smart technique, right? There you go. What else we got? Social heredity talks about. Let me see. I don't know if there's he's got a lot of examples. As the author approached the 2 while across the pet was called, right? So he's giving you again exemplification. That's generally what he's got here. He doesn't give you a lot of hard data, firsthand or primary research that he's done. Well, he does do that. He mentions that has been done, but he doesn't show you the data. Right? He just mentions it in passing, right? In the abstract. But most of his evidence or support of his thesis or thesi, right? The overall thesis and then the smaller sub-thesi, right? He uses anecdotes, short stories, right? Maybe some that are, where he's involved. This is also what Ching-Ning Chu does the same thing. Some where he's involved, some that are relatively well-known situations, some not so well-known, or, situations that he knew of, didn't experience firsthand, and talks about it to expand upon what he's talking about. A bullfrog could be caught on a fish hook, right? There you go. That's kind of like an analogy or a fable or a parable. Fables and parables are also great examples, providing evidence, explanation, expanding upon a relatively vague concept, like in the the Old Testament. Don't get on me because my study of the Old Testament of the Bible kind of old. That's not up to date. But there's the story about the prodigal son, right? And he comes back. He had been given some money, and he went off and spent it and just blew it. Didn't try to get a job, didn't try to better himself, just blew it all, got drunk, partied, came back, and he was miserable. Dad, take me home, take me back. And he was celebrated, right? And the other son, who stayed there and worked hard and dedicated and blah, blah, blah. Now, he was the up and up. He was the one on the up and up. His prodigal son was kind of a loser, to be honest, right? So, and the son that lived there said, what the heck, Dad? What's up? Why are you celebrating him? He gave money, went out and blew it, got drunk, and just wasted his time. And it was kind of a look at unconditional love, and even maybe today or now, just hearing that story, you go, screw that, I wouldn't do that, But there's a lesson, there's a point, a thesis, a theme, a claim. You're arguing a point, right? Is it not strange that we fear most that which never happens? Oh, there it is, right? Oh, what is it? How does it go? We fear a lot. And most of what we fear, we find out later, never comes to fruition, right? We're constantly fearful of things. And in most cases, some fears certainly do come true, for sure, right? But a lot of it we get it worked up in our minds, right? And instead of focusing on the fear, the problem, we should focus on solutions, right? How to be positive, how to get out of that fear, or do something that will lessen the chance or opportunity to be harmed by that fear or to ever have to encounter that fear again. So if you're over here freaking out, panicking, looking at the fear, screaming every 5 minutes or every half a day or whatever, being fearful, that's counterproductive. That's weak. Being strong, you go over here and start thinking about the things that you need to do in order to get out of that fear, overcome that fear, and hopefully do things that will prevent that fear from occurring again, or the things that make you fearful. Limit their occurrence. Do what you need to do. That's what life is generally about, right? Not just laying about and hoping stuff works out. You have to actively, concertedly, concertedly in a focused way, work on stuff, right? And the people that have these skills and these abilities are the ones that are going to probably do best in life. Better, best, right? That we destroy our initiative by the fear of defeat, there you go, when in reality, defeat is the most useful tonic. It should be accepted as such, right? Napoleon Hill talks about that through all this text. That's a Michael Jordan, I achieved more than most because I was willing to be defeated or to lose or to screw up more than most, right? Edison and the light bulb, that's not 1,000 failures, right? That's 1,000 steps to the answer. And again, it's your perspective on things. Most people have very, very weak, terrible ways of experiencing life. I wonder sometimes, how they even get through a day or a week with such weak thinking. And I see it. I go on these sports chats and online as well, and people are just negative. It's never going to happen. Everything is negative and always focusing on the negative. And the only time they're happy is when there's a positive, and positives really rarely happen because they're so focused on the negative, they don't even do anything to encourage or to work on or to enhance the positives, or maybe a more positive way of dealing with defeat. Sorry, drives me nuts. So here he is talking about the dogs and more, right? Here's the Airedale was a poor soldier, right? The next day, so again, all of these illustrations. Here he tells you, right? He summarizes. With the exception of the first, describe the process of gathering knowledge through direct experience. Observe the marked difference between knowledge gathered by direct experience and that which is gathered through the training of the young by the old, as in the case of the ruffed grouse and her young. Wow. Great examples. There are myriads, so now I'm getting to the more, to the concepts, the conceptual, not necessarily evidence or support. There are myriads of forms of fear, but none are more deadly than the fear of poverty and old age. We drive our bodies as if they were slaves because we are so afraid of poverty that we wish to hoard money for what? Old age? This common form of fear drives us so hard that we overwork our bodies and bring on the very thing we're struggling to avoid, right? And that's what we do, right? I'm afraid of poverty. I'm afraid of old age. I'm afraid of being unemployed. And then we work ourselves endlessly that you get a heart attack at 40 and you're dead, right? Oh boy, there you go, right? Here is another man who was born of poor parents, Republican, right? One of the chief disadvantages of inherited wealth, I know about this too, is the fact that it too often leads to inaction and loss of self-confidence, right? Usually it's those who have to put in the effort, to have to work and sacrifice, that find solace in that. They find strength in that. They're encouraged by that. They feel good within themselves. Nobody felt better by laying around doing less, right? It's about doing what you need to do. And it's not always about hard work. You probably will have to work hard in the beginning, but eventually it's about working smart. I actually do less and less work as the years go by, right? I'm doing less and less, but I'm doing more and more because I know through experience and through knowledge what to do, what not to do, where not to waste my time, energy, emotion, spirit, whatever, right? Avoid all that, get away from that, right? Work to your strengths, strengthen yourself, use your brain, use this knowledge. Boys return home. He's using a lot of examples here. Not all rich men's sons turn out to be so, unfortunately, but the fact remains, nevertheless, that inaction, there you go, leads to atrophy. Atrophy is like if you lay in bed too long, your muscles lose your muscles. Yes, your muscles become weak, or you lose muscle. That's what I was trying to say. To atrophy, and this in turn leads to loss of ambition and self-confidence. Right? There are certain principles. I think they're innate, and everybody pretty much knows what you should and shouldn't be doing, right? But I don't know what happens. You know, maybe we're deceived by family, friends, bad ideas, bad influences. I don't know, a focus on the wrong things or whatever. There are certain things that I can work you through my program, which will be actually, I don't want to say more useful, but probably more useful and applicable because I know it. This, I don't know so much. And for me, there's a lot here, probably too much. Just like my critical thinking text. I think that text is phenomenal, but there's just way too much there, you know. Instead of 800 pages, it should probably be half that, right? So that's another thing. You need to learn how to whittle down stuff to the basics. That's why I'm not going over everything. I'm just trying to give you a general overview of things, right? Salesmanship, he's talking about self-confidence. Then he began to make his call. So here's another example. No man can become a great leader of men unless he has the milk of human kindness in his own heart and leads by suggestion and kindness rather than by force, right? All of these things are just common sense. These things work, that works, that works, that works. This doesn't work. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't do this. Don't do that, right? Don't spend too much time fearing or looking at fear or worrying about fear or hanging out with people who are negative or loud or nasty or dishonest or gross or dumb, lazy, right? Hang out with these people over here, the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts of life. I'm not talking about perfect people, pristine people, you know, but people who are generally on the up and up and they're doing what they need to do and make the sacrifices that they need to make in order to feel good about themselves, in order to move forward, in order to be successful, fulfilled, happy, content, not miserable. Like so many, too many people. Never mind in the United States, but on this planet. Down here he goes, he's going to talk to give some advice to the wives of men. I'm not going to go over that. One of the most successful men in his line in America gives entire credit for his success to his wife. That's valid. Again, that's part of the mastermind kind of thing. My wife supports pretty much everything I do and vice versa, right? Find people of like minds, right? We don't sit around and drink. We don't drink. I definitely do swear, especially when my teams lose. We don't drink. We don't do drugs. We don't spend a lot of time wasting our time. We're really focused on family, right? We work. We do what we need to do to work, right? We hang out with people who are pretty sober and hardworking. My friends are like, doctors and lawyers and engineers, people on the up and up who are pretty productive in life, and they're doing something in their families. They have families. They're sacrificing. They're not selfish. They're giving to their spouses and to their family and back to their community, right? In various ways and so forth and so on. All the stuff that's going to lift you up and make you feel good and move forward with energy and passion and purpose and all that good stuff, right? When they were first married, she wrote a creed which he signed and placed over his desk. So this is good. You can go through that. I'm not going to read all this. You might well remember, this is right in the middle there, right? That nothing can bring you success but yourself, right? Of course, you will need the cooperation of others, blah, 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 right? And I talk about this. I just posted on this, right? Maybe it was an article that I just wrote or rewrote or sent to somebody. That the majority of what occurs to us is our responsibility. I have to be self-accountable, right? There's unknowns out there that will take you down, maybe a disease or a job loss or whatever, right? I'm not talking about those things, right? But generally speaking, you can't be pointing, again, that's weakness, right? I can't do this, or this bad stuff happened because of this group, these people, that person, right? That's not how it works, right? You have to do things. Maybe you have to get away from those people or that group or that person or that job or that relationship or whatever, right? And then tap into the stuff that really feeds you and energizes you, right? That encourages you, that lifts you up, right? Because there are, there's these codependent people. They just keep falling back into the same house, right? Self-destructive, psychological issue. Right? Don't be there. I'm generally on the up and up. I don't complain. I very rarely complain. I do complain. Everybody complains, right? I don't yell at my wife. I don't yell at my son. I don't hit him. I don't abuse people, right? The only thing I abuse sometimes is my the stuff in the room when my team is losing. I tell my wife, honey, game's on, you might want to leave. Because that's the only time I lose it. Anyways, if you want a thing done well, call on some busy person to do it. This is very well-known concept, right? Busy people are generally the most painstaking and thorough in all they do. Why? Because they have to be. Because they're busy. There's so much stuff going on. They have to be very thorough, accurate, hardworking, working smart, right? Efficient, right? So true. Self-confidence formula. First, this is great. I know that I have the ability to achieve the object of my definite purpose. Therefore, I demand of myself persistent, aggressive, and continuous action toward its attainment, right? When I was first starting out my business and my coaching and my studying, right? Looking into the various disciplines of humankind to understand human nature and humankind so that I could be a good coach and a good teacher, right? I told you for years, I'd wake up, work, keep working all day, go to sleep, wake up, work, go all day, go to sleep, right? And I did that week after week, month after month, year after year. 5, 6, 7 days a week, 8 days a week. Second, I realized that the dominating thoughts of my mind, there it is, eventually reproduce themselves in outward bodily action. That's why my company is called Inner Projection, right? Do you want to be a complainer? Do you want to be an annoyer? Do you want to be weak, selfish, lazy, self-serving, self-interested only, right? Too much here, that's gonna weaken you, right? And nobody wants to hang out with that, right? Nobody wants to engage with that, right? And gradually transform themselves into physical reality. Therefore, I will concentrate my mind for 30 minutes daily upon the task of thinking of the person I intend to be. That's good. That's kind of the visualization, like with your visual board. This is a good thing. This is what I did. I did these things. right? I don't want to be shy anymore. I don't want to be introverted. I don't want to be nervous about everything and every counter and every person out there, you know. And I flipped it. When I was like that, I was down in the muck and the mire and the dirt and the nastiness. Terrible. I felt terrible, totally weak. And then I flipped it. Now the problem is that I'm too strong sometimes. I'm too forceful. I'm too single-minded. I'm too uninhibited, right? So that might be a problem. You know? So you always have, and you have to find balance, right? I've seen people really annoyed with me, you know, because look at them all confident. I hate, you know why they hate you? If you're successful or happy or confident or all that stuff, yeah, jealous. I'm not that. Look at that person that I'm not. I hate me. You know, they're not hating you, they're hating, right? That's when you point out, that guy, that person did it. 1 out, 3 back, right? You're pointing, right? You're pointing, 1 finger out, 3 come back. I like that one, right? I know through the principle of auto-suggestion, any desire persistently hold in my mind will eventually seek expressions to practical means. That's why I control not only what I think, but what I get engaged in. I don't have television per se. I have movies and access to things, YouTube and whatnot, but I don't have network television. I don't have cable. I don't have internet television. I generally stay away from that stuff. I don't listen to the radio majority of the time. When I'm in my car, I put on something that I learned from. It might be a spiritual message, it might be a financial message, it might be a historical information, and it might be motivational, whatever, right? I'm always putting in here. It's like people want to be healthy in their stomach. They don't put a lot of crap in there, right? I'm okay at doing that, but I'm not my best at doing that with the mouth. But as far as what goes in here, I limit it. I control it to the greatest degree, right? Because what goes in, I don't know about that. What goes in conditions, right? More and more and more and more. If it's bad, if it's dirty, if it's nasty, that's how you're conditioning yourself, right? I have clearly mapped out and written down a description of my definite purpose in life for the coming 5 years. I fully realize that no wealth or position can long endure unless built upon truth and justice. Yes, in the American way, but that's why Einstein says become a person of value. Not success, but value. What's your value system? What do you value most? I value love. I value honesty. I value relationships. I always do this wheel of life. What are the top 10 things you value most? I value my time. I value my privacy. I value an exciting job. I value a job that's not boring or the same all the time. I like variety. I like adventure. I value those things. Right? Know yourself. What are your values? I haven't talked too much about that, but that's another thing you can look at, right? To understand yourself better. And the more you understand yourself, the more you define, the more specific you get, the more you're empowered, right? I will engage in no transaction which does not benefit all whom it affects. That's really reaching out. That's really going for it, right? I will eliminate hatred, envy, hatred. Is there anything I hate? Once in a while, maybe. Envy. Not really. Jealousy, selfishness, cynicism, right? Because I know that a negative attitude to others can never bring me success. And this is a concept that I see people who are in the field of achievement talk about in regards to money, right? I found myself watching television getting negative thoughts. So I turned off the television. Or I got rid of the negative thoughts, right? I try to be positive. And do you want to do it so it's perfunctory, it's just natural, and all you do is try to be positive all day? No, I think you need to be real, right? Don't be fake. Don't force it. Don't do it too much. Don't become a robot or automaton. I am happy all the time. Look at me. Hi, Bob. Ha, ha, ha. I'm happy, right? You want to stay real, for sure. Before you sign this name, there's some more stuff there, stuff and things and whatnot. Home is something that cannot be bought. You can buy a house, but only a woman can make it a home. Some people will say, oh, that's kind of sexist. What about a man? What about two men, two women? Right. So again, some of this stuff might be archaic. If you don't like it, move beyond it. You got Henry Ford, Miles C. Jones. Comes to mind, a well-known poem was author expressed a great psychological. So a lot of this stuff, here's Roosevelt, the only man who makes no mistakes. Again, okay, the only human person who makes no mistakes is the person who never does anything. You've heard that, probably heard that one before, right? Do not be afraid of mistakes providing you do not make the same one twice or over and over too many times. You're going to make the same mistake twice, believe me. I keep making some mistakes over and over again, but you want less and less and more and more time between each one. Yeah. That's a good idea, philosophy, something based in reality that's manageable. Yeah. And I think that's about it. Love, beauty, joy, and worship are forever building, tearing down and rebuilding the foundation of each man's soul. That's great stuff. There's a book called As a Man Thinketh. Again, sorry, the terms are a little archaic, but As a Human Thinketh, and it's very brief. Again, something I probably have to go over with you or post and give you access to. It's probably, if you print it out, PDF 20 pages, but it's probably the most intense and dense material you'll ever encounter. More dense than this even. I talk about here, even thick-faced black art, where you can read a paragraph and go over it for hours or days or something and contemplate and really use your critical thinking and go deep on it. But As a Man Thinketh, or As a Human Thinketh, right, we'll say. Wow, really intense and deep. So I think that's it. The habit of saving, I'm going to skip over that because, to be honest, I don't really think, this is old, this is archaic. These days, you really can't save. You have to invest. Because what do you get with a savings, right? What do you get with an IRA or a savings bank, a savings account in a bank, right? Or IRA or Roth, CD, what do you get? 0.5%? What's inflation? 8%? So with the savings, you're going to cut 0.5%. So instead of your dollars inflating 8%, it's only inflating 7.5%, right? So this is not that good. So anyways, until next time, until lesson 5, we'll see you. Be good humans and talk to you soon.